Because what is forbidden isn't just tempting, it becomes a mirror reflecting the parts of ourselves we've hidden, repressed, or denied. Carl Jung taught us that the unconscious mind holds the shadow, the aspects of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. When desire is forbidden, it often stems from this shadow, making it more potent and alluring. The forbidden ignites our imagination, not merely because it's off limits, but because it represents the unexplored territories of our psyche. It's not the object of desire itself, but what it symbolizes: freedom, rebellion, authenticity. When we confront these forbidden desires, we are not succumbing to temptation, we are engaging in a dialogue with our inner selves. It's an opportunity to integrate the shadow, to become whole. So, the next time you feel the pull of the forbidden, pause. Ask yourself, what part of me is seeking expression? What truth have I been avoiding? In embracing these questions, we don't just understand our desires, we understand ourselves. And in that understanding lies true freedom. Because desire, at its core, is not about possession. It's about permission. Permission to feel, to want, to remember who you were before shame told you to behave. When something becomes forbidden, it doesn't just become unreachable. It becomes unclaimed truth. And Jung knew this. He saw the forbidden not as evil, but as a signal, a flare shot into the sky by your unconscious, begging to be seen. Why does the off-limits make your heart race? Because it touches a nerve you buried. Because it speaks to the version of you who still burns beneath the skin. The one who was told to sit still, be good, follow the rules, smile nicely, and that version of you never died. They're still in there, wild, watching, waiting for the moment. You drop the performance and let them breathe. That's why forbidden desire feels stronger. Not because it's wrong, but because it's honest, raw, undiluted. A scream in a world addicted to silence. And the more you pretend it's not there, the louder it becomes. Because the psyche cannot be tricked. You can lie to your partner. You can lie to your family. You can even lie to your God. But you cannot lie to the unconscious. It sees everything, and it waits, and it whispers, until the whisper becomes a hunger you can't ignore. And that hunger, it's not just for a person, or a touch, or a thrill behind closed doors. It's a hunger for contact with your unlived life. The moments you traded for acceptance. The instincts you buried for approval. The fire you extinguished to fit inside someone else's idea of who you should be. Forbidden desire becomes intoxicating. Not because you want to ruin something, but because you want to remember something. Something sacred, something wild, something true. And yet, most of us never admit it. We blame it on temptation, on timing, on the chemistry we just couldn't resist. But what if it's not about them at all? What if that forbidden pull is your soul, reaching through the rubble of your repression, begging you to wake up? What if it's the shadow saying, you've silenced me long enough. You've called me dangerous. You've locked me in the basement of your being. But I am you, and I will not die quietly. Jung knew the more you reject your shadow, the more it owns you. It seduces you in the dark. It drags you into secrecy. It turns your hunger into guilt, your curiosity into shame, your truth into betrayal. But the moment you face it, the moment you stop pretending it's not there, that's when everything changes. Because now, desire is no longer forbidden. It's integrated. And When desire is integrated, when it is welcomed out of the shadows and into the light, it loses its grip on you. Not because it disappears, but because it transforms. It becomes a compass, not a curse. A teacher, not a tormentor. A fire that warms. It's not one that burns your life to ash. But this only happens when you stop making desire the villain and start seeing it for what it truly is. Unspoken truth. The forbidden isn't dangerous because it's wrong. It's dangerous because it's honest. And honesty in a dishonest world is always seen as a threat. But you are not built to suppress yourself into safety. You were built to reclaim yourself through truth. And that means you must be willing to look at what you want. Truly want without flinching. Not to act on it recklessly. Not to romanticize chaos. But to know yourself fully without editing your essence to fit someone else's definition of purity. Because what is repressed will always return, stronger, hungrier, more distorted. But what is integrated, what is seen, named, held, understood, becomes sacred power. It becomes part of your wholeness, your clarity, your alignment. And suddenly, forbidden desire doesn't control you. It guides you. It shows you where you're still asleep, where you've chosen comfort over aliveness, where you've been faithful to your mask, but disloyal to your truth. And if you're brave enough, you use that desire, not to destroy the life you've built, but to rebuild it in a way that includes all of you. Because inclusion of the self, the whole self, is the only real path to freedom. You don't need to act on every impulse, but you need to listen to everyone. You need to ask it, what are you trying to teach me? What am I not admitting to myself? What have I sacrificed on the altar of being good? And if you listen deeply, forbidden desire will reveal this. You have betrayed yourself far more often than you betrayed others. You've said yes when you meant no. You've smiled when you felt dead inside. You've stayed silent in the presence of truth, just to keep the peace. But desire, real desire, is the soul's resistance to self-abandonment. It is the wild within you that refuses to die quietly. It is the whisper that says, there's more to you than this. And that whisper grows louder the longer you ignore it, until one day it screams in the form of temptation, or a midlife unraveling, or a secret you can no longer hide. And you have a choice. Will you continue performing a version of yourself that keeps the world comfortable while your soul rots from starvation? Or will you turn toward the forbidden, not to indulge it, but to integrate it, to reclaim the parts of you that society told you to suppress, to meet your shadow with reverence, not resistance? Because when you do, you become someone no longer ruled by desire, but in conversation with it. And in that conversation, you discover something radical. That desire is not here to ruin you. It's here to reveal you, to show you where you are still asleep in your own life, where you are living by rules that were never yours, where you've replaced passion with politeness, depth with duty, and truth with obedience. And this is the real reason forbidden desire feels so strong. Not because it is wrong, but because it is unlived life, calling your name. It is the echo of your authenticity, lost beneath layers of expectation, craving, resurrection. And when you ignore it, when you push it into the darkness, it becomes louder, more distorted, more destructive. But when you turn to it, when you face it without fear, it becomes your path back to yourself. Not to chaos, not to betrayal, but to truth. The truth that you were never meant to live divided. The truth that fidelity is not just about loyalty to another, but about loyalty to your own soul. Because when you are loyal to yourself, you no longer chase what is forbidden. You embody what is authentic. And from that place, desire loses its power to control you. Because you have nothing to hide, nothing to prove, nothing to seek in the shadows. You've already made peace with your fire. And now you carry it with you, not as a secret, but as a source of light. And that light, that fierce, untamed inner flame, it doesn't need to burn everything down to be real. It just needs to be acknowledged. It needs to be witnessed, not through shame, not through secrecy, but through the eyes of someone who has finally said, I will no longer exile parts of myself just to be accepted. Because the moment you accept all of you, not just the polished, palatable pieces, is the moment forbidden desire loses its grip. Not because it's gone, but because it no longer needs to hide. It has been integrated, transformed, honored, and now it fuels you, not from behind a locked door, but from the center of your being. It becomes clarity, power, creative force, a compass pointing you toward wholeness. You don't need to act out. You don't need to escape. You don't need to betray to feel alive, because you've already returned to the only place you were ever missing from, yourself. And in that return, you realize the desire was never the danger. The danger was forgetting who you are, forgetting the wild, the real, the soul beneath the mask. But now, you remember, and from that memory, you rise, integrated, unashamed, awake to every part of yourself that was once hidden, awake to the truths you silenced just to belong, awake to the ache you mislabeled as weakness, only to discover it was your deepest strength calling you home. And now, you don't just understand why desire feels stronger when it's forbidden. You understand why you couldn't ignore it. Because it was never just about lust. It was about loss. Loss of connection. Loss of aliveness. Loss of the voice inside you that dared to speak before the world taught you to whisper. But no more. Now, your desire becomes your prayer. Not to break vows, but to make real ones. Vows to honor your full self. To speak when silence would be safer. To feel when numbness would be easier. To burn with truth when the world only offers you the illusion of control. Because that is where your power lives. Not in denying the fire, but in carrying it consciously. And when you do, you stop fearing the forbidden. You understand it. You respect it. You use it to light the path you were born to walk. No longer afraid. No longer divided. No longer asleep in the role of who you thought you had to be. You are whole now. And a whole human being doesn't need to chase the forbidden because they embody the freedom they once thought they had to find in secret. They no longer seek validation in the shadows. They no longer search for themselves in the arms of what's off limits. They brought every part of themselves to the surface and stood there unflinching. Because to be whole is not to be without desire. It's to be in the right relationship with it, to know where it points, to see what it awakens, to feel its pulse without becoming its prisoner. And that is what makes you powerful. Not your ability to suppress, not your ability to pretend, but your ability to integrate, your ability to stand at the edge of your longing, look it in the eye, and say, I see you, I know what you want, but I also know what I need, and I will not betray myself for you or for anyone else, because this is the final transformation of forbidden desire, not its disappearance, but its transcendence, no longer a secret, no longer a threat, but a sacred messenger that guided you back to truth. And that truth, you are not too much. You are not broken. You are not wrong for wanting more. You are simply someone who is no longer willing to live half a life just to be accepted. You are someone who dares to feel fully, who dares to burn without apology, who dares to choose self-respect over silent self-betrayal. You are someone who has faced the forbidden and walked away free. Free not because you denied your desire, but because you understood it. Free not because you silenced your longing, but because you listened to it without flinching. Free not because you killed the fire, but because you learned how to carry it without being consumed. And now you walk differently. You speak from a deeper place. Your energy no longer hides. It commands, because you've been to the underworld of your own psyche. You've met the part of you the world told you to reject. And you didn't run. You stayed. You listened. You healed. And now your presence tells a different story. Not one of control, not one of fear, but one of ownership. You own your passion. You own your pain. You own your contradictions. And in doing so, you become whole. And wholeness is magnetic. It's undeniable. It's rare. Because most people live split. They wear masks. They smile through numbness. They call performance love. They call repression virtue. And then they wonder why they're still hungry. But you are no longer hungry for what's forbidden because you are fed by what is true. You build a new relationship with yourself, one where nothing is exile, nothing is shame, everything is seen. And from that place, you don't chase desire, you embody it. You walk into every room with the gravity of someone who has faced their darkness and turned it into power, because that's what happens. When you no longer fear your forbidden desires, you become a force, not the kind that dominates, not the kind that conquers, but the kind that radiates truth so intensely that others feel it before you speak. You don't need to explain yourself anymore. You don't need to justify your fire. You don't need to ask for permission to be real, because the work has been done in silence, in shadows, in solitude. You stood in front of your own mirror, naked and unguarded, and said, I am not here to be acceptable. I am here to be authentic. And in that moment, you were reborn. Reborn not into perfection, but into presence. Reborn not into someone who never desires the forbidden, but into someone who no longer needs it to feel alive. Because you carry the source of that aliveness now. It's not out there. It's not in them. It's in you, in the way you walk, in the way you choose, in the way you no longer sacrifice your essence for temporary approval. This is the real power, not to resist what you feel, but to rise with it consciously. To feel the heat of temptation and use it as fuel to create something sacred, something aligned, something true. You are no longer afraid of your own depth. You have tasted the fire and survived. And now you live from the flame, not the fear. And when you live from the flame, everything changes. Your relationships deepen, not because they are flawless, but because they are honest. Your boundaries sharpen, not out of defensiveness, but out of clarity. Your presence expands, not to impress, but to embody the truths of who you've become. Because when you stop hiding what's inside, when you stop labeling your hunger as shame, you start living in full alignment. No more split self. No more acting out in secret. No more pretending that comfort is fulfillment. Now you know, desire is not the enemy. It's a compass. The forbidden only ruled you when you were ruled by fear. But fear is gone now, replaced by awareness, by reverence, by the fierce elegance of someone who has stood at the edge of self-destruction and chose self-discovery instead. You chose depth over denial. You chose transformation over suppression. You chose to stop outsourcing your power to things you were taught to fear. And because of that, you are dangerous now, but in the most beautiful way. Dangerous to the systems that survive on your silence. Dangerous to the narratives that keep you small. Dangerous to every voice that told you your truth was too much to carry. You carry it now with grace, with fire, with the quiet conviction of someone who no longer hides from their own soul. And when you no longer hide from your own soul, you become unshakable. Not because you're invincible, but because you're intimate with your own vulnerability. You don't run from the ache. You sit with it. You listen to it. You ask it, what are you here to teach me? And it teaches you everything. It teaches you that the longing you once feared is not your flaw. It's your guide. It teaches you that what you called weakness was actually the gateway to your wildest strength. It teaches you that the forbidden isn't forbidden because it's evil. It's forbidden because it's free. And you were born for that kind of freedom. The kind that doesn't wait for permission. The kind that doesn't bow to shame. The kind that walks through the fire of self-revelation and comes out on the other side. Not burned, but illuminated. This is who you are now. You are no longer at war with your desires. You are in dialogue with them. You are no longer ruled by what you repress. You are led by what you understand. And so when the world whispers, don't go there. You smile because you already have. And you didn't lose yourself. You found yourself in the fire, in the hunger, in the forbidden. You found the truth that was always waiting. Beneath the rules, beneath the fear, beneath the silence. And now you walk with that truth as your guide, as your compass, as your home. And this home is not built of safety. It is built of sovereignty, the kind that doesn't flinch when tested, the kind that doesn't collapse in the face of judgment, the kind that says, I will not trade my truth for anyone's approval, because you know now the most dangerous thing in the world is not someone who desires the forbidden. It's someone who desires truth more than they fear rejection. And that's what you've become. Not a slave to impulse, but a student of inner fire. Not someone who hides their hunger, but someone who has learned to wield it with honor. This is the rebirth that forbidden desire offers, if you're brave enough to face it. It doesn't end with indulgence. It ends with integration, with standing fully in yourself without apology, with looking into the mirror of your desire and saying, I see you, I hear you, and I no longer fear what you reveal. That is the work. That is the liberation. That is a love of self most people never dare to reach for. But you did. You walked the long road home, through ache, through temptation, through the forest of your own forgotten needs, and you emerged not hollow, not haunted, but whole. So now, when others ask you, why does desire feel so strong when it's forbidden? You don't just give them an answer. You give them a mirror, because you know the strongest desire is the one that leads you back to who you really are. So let the world call it forbidden. Let them point fingers, cast shame, recite their rules. You know the truth now. You've walked through the hunger. You've stared down the seduction. You've stood in front of your own shadow and said, I will not exile you. I will integrate you. And in doing so, you didn't become weaker. You became whole. This is what they never told you. That forbidden desire wasn't meant to destroy you. It was meant to deliver you back to your fire, back to your fullness, back to the raw, unfiltered truth of who you are, when no one is watching. And now you watch yourself not with judgment, but with reverence, because you've earned this clarity. You've paid for it in silence, in shame, in the long nights of pretending to be okay. No more pretending, no more splitting, no more apologizing for the parts of you that refuse to die quietly. You are not dangerous because you feel desire. You are dangerous because you've become conscious of it. And you now use it not to run, not to betray, but to awaken. You don't chase the forbidden anymore. You embody the free. And in doing so, you give the world something rare, something holy. A human being who has nothing left to hide. A soul who burns clean. A truth that no longer asks for permission. That is who you are now. Whole, honest, unapologetically alive,